Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Yuat. It's Friday, April 29th. This is Africa 54.
Kenyans pay their last respects to former President Kibaki. We'll have the details. Ethiopia's declared ceasefire with Tigrayan rebels in March raised hopes for possible peace talks to end the deadly 15-month war. But renewed fighting has left desperate civilians waiting for the bloodshed to end. And in Madagascar south, crops regularly fail due to drought and land erosion. Could a staple crop in India be the answer?
We begin in East Africa, where Kenya held a state funeral for former President Mwai Kibaki on Friday in the capital, Nairobi. Kibaki is credited with reviving Kenya's then ailing economy, but his tenure also was marred by deadly violence that killed more than 1,200 people following his disputed re-election in December 2007. Paul Ndiho has more.
Kenyans held a state funeral Friday for former President Mwai Kibaki, who died last weekend, whose decade in power was marked by economic revival, scandal, and violence. Kibaki, whose death was announced last Friday, was praised by Kenya's current leaders as a respected statesman. He was 90 years old. Authorities declared Friday a public holiday in honor of Mwai Kibaki, who served 2 terms as president from 2002 to 2013. Several African leaders are among the dignitaries who attended the state funeral in Nairobi. Hundreds of Kenyans stood by the roadside to watch a military procession escorting the hearse to the National Stadium, where thousands more had gathered since early morning. For John Wanyoki, Kibaki's tenure was a foundation for a better future.
Microfinance Kenya women
Microfinancing for Kenyan women and others started during Mwai Kibaki's tenure, and the foundation he put for Vision 2030 gave us hope for the future. The sense of harmony he created has contributed to peace in Kenya.
Kibaki, who served as Kenya's 3rd president from 2003 to 2013, is credited with reviving Kenya's then ailing economy. Kibaki ushered in economic reforms and a new constitution for Kenya, but some say he failed to deliver on promises to stomp out corruption. However, Kibaki received a lot of praise for introducing free primary education.
It was difficult even to afford school books for our children. The president declared free education. Children get free books, some school, and even give free food, which helps children from needy families. He also resolved some of the issues that teachers were facing. And this reduced teacher strikes that were common, even at hospitals. There were few strikes, and so we lived well.
A British-educated economist, Kibaki's characteristic calm demeanor concealed with political shrewdness that finally propelled him to the presidency after 4 decades as a lawmaker, government minister, and vice president to his predecessor, Daniel Arap Moi.
He initiated the development, the construction of roads. We never had good roads. He was polite and kind. Whenever we went to him for any help, he was also willing to help, especially for us women. That is why we have come out in large numbers to pay our respects.
Mwai Kibaki will be buried tomorrow, Saturday, at his country home in Othaya, Nyeri County. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
For more on how Kenya's third president, Mwai Kibaki, is being remembered, I'm joined by Africa 54 managing editor Vincent Bakori. Vincent, great to have you here. You've covered President Kibaki over the years while back in Kenya. How will he be remembered?
Definitely, we've seen that many Kenyans will remember in different ways. But at the national level, there's one thing that President Kibaki did that was amazing. He demystified and humanized the presidency. Kenyans had for decades lived under a rule of terror. The previous president that he inherited, or rather he succeeded, Daniel Arap Moi, was a feared man. He's a person who made people tremble in their boots. But Kibaki came in, he became more human. In fact, his speeches were laced more with humor than threats, which was a kind of a common thing in the past regime.
Including where cabinet ministers would be fired on radio as they ate lunch.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Well, so what kind of impact did President Kibaki have in the political arena?
One of the things people will always have to remember that by forming a formidable coalition, a political coalition that removed KANU, a one-party, the one-party culture ended in Kenya, which for years, Kenyans lived under the rulership of one party and one president for many, many years. Kibaki, by breaking up that, helped Kenyans to now realize that actually they can possibly now have elections every 5 years with a prospect of even having a different president, a different political party, and that created, set in motion a culture that, of course, now can never be reversed, where we can expect elections every 5 years and at least a guaranteed new president after every 10 years.
And what can the current political leadership in Kenya learn from the late president?
Yes, it's how quickly Kibaki turned the country around after nearly 25 years of economic decline and political terror, that actually you can, if you put your mind to it and you're determined to work for your country, resolve so many issues, including economic and political, within the shortest time possible, and put a country in a path of development and peace.
And very quickly, what about the youth of Kenya? What can they learn from the late Kibaki?
Well, that he was a man who believed that you have to work hard in order to help the country move forward. Do not sit back and wait to be given. He always said, you have to engage yourself and do something, and we can help you.
Right.
He helped them to think about how to contribute.
It's definitely going to be a different kind of political landscape in the East African country. Vincent, thank you very much for your excellent analysis on the late president. Ethiopia declared a ceasefire with Tigrayan rebels in March and raised hopes for possible peace talks to end the deadly 15-month war. While some northern areas of the Amhara region saw a brief return to peace, renewed fighting has left desperate civilians waiting for the bloodshed to end. Henry Wilkins reports from Shewarobit, Ethiopia.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced a humanitarian ceasefire 5 weeks ago, but it is already beginning to fray. In the northern region of Amhara, fighting had subsided, but last week it erupted again. VOA spoke to witnesses who got caught up in the fighting when militants from the Fano militia group on the border of the Oromia zone in Amhara allegedly opened fire on civilians close to the town of Shewarobit.
I was 3 kilometers away when the conflict erupted. Wolale, the epicenter of the conflict, is almost burned to the ground, like Ataye town was, where 3 such ethnic-based conflicts happened in the space of a year.
The hills of Amhara have been the scene of fighting between government forces and Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, separatists and militia groups for months.
People have lost their homes, they've lost their relatives, they've had their lives upended. Most people say they just want to see peace now.
Not least Demeku Ali Abdu, who says her son was taken and killed after TPLF troops occupied her house last year.
When I confirmed my child's death, I felt so alone. I felt bereft of my future. And also, I thought about his 2 children growing up without a father. I hate to live without him.
Both sides in the Ethiopian civil war have been accused of human rights abuses. These images provided by rights organisations show government forces just before they execute a group of Tigrayans. Ahmed Mohamed Syed, part of a local militia who fought to push the TPLF out of his hometown, also hopes the fighting has finally ended for good.
I hope such conflict will never come back again. All parties have learned lessons, and I hope every person strives for the prevalence of peace.
However, a spokesperson for the local government said the presence of the TPLF in Amhara has emboldened other separatist groups like the Oromos who are aligned with them.
In the special Oromo zone, both forces have a common goal or target. Their marriage seems to have become more concrete as they have common agendas of dismantling the state apparatus and retaking control of politics.
The Special Oromo Zone is an enclave of ethnic Oromians surrounded by the Amhara region. In January, Abiy announced a national dialogue with the aim of bringing peace to the country, but the initiative has been criticised for failing to include many of the factions engaged in conflict, including the TPLF.
There was optimism from all parties involved. Divergence have also started to emerge, among these opposing parties, especially on the way it is believed to be not inclusive, and its credibility has been questioned.
Given the renewed fighting in this area of Amhara, at least, residents' hopes for peace might not be realised. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Shua Rabit, Ethiopia.
More than 3,000 refugees, migrants and asylum seekers died or went missing last year while trying to reach Europe via the Mediterranean Sea and Atlantic Sea route, according to a report released on Friday by the UN Refugee Agency. UNHCR's Shabia Mantour told a news briefing in Geneva the 2021 figure represented nearly twice the number of lives lost in the previous year. The dead and missing came from a range of North and Sub-Saharan African countries, including Tunisia, Morocco, Mali, Guinea, Eritrea, Egypt, Ivory Coast and Senegal, as well as Iran, Syria and Afghanistan. So far in 2022, 553 asylum seekers have been reported dead or missing. A report by the UN Rights Office last year said the European Union is partly to blame for the deaths in the Mediterranean due to unanswered distress calls and the obstruction of humanitarian rescue efforts. In Madagascar south, crops regularly fail due to drought and land erosion. For farmers like Kazi Zanapijo, pigeon peas, a staple crop in India, are providing an answer. Clara Frank has more.
With 10 children at home, Madagascan farmer Kazi Zanapijo has plenty of mouths to feed. But in the country's drought-stricken far south, that's been an enormous challenge. As crops successively failed, she often resorted to feeding her family wild plants and cacti. But not anymore, and that's thanks to the pigeon pea.
I used to plant other things, but they didn't grow. Since I started planting pigeon peas, I've harvested a lot. It's what allows me to feed my 10 children. We eat them all the time. A minimum harvest for us is 800 cups.
Pigeon peas are a staple in India. But in southern Madagascar, subsistence farmers have traditionally grown maize and sweet potatoes. Over the past decade, those crops have often failed due to a combination of drought and land erosion. Climate scientists say rains will become even scarcer and less predictable in the future. And that's why local non-governmental organization CITAS is promoting the pigeon peas. They are drought-resistant, highly nutritious, and good for the soil, and their branches can also be sold at market as kindling. Zanapijo and her family have made enough money to finance upgrades in their village.
My family and I built this rainwater reservoir. We used to have to walk to the coast to get water. It was very far and tiring. When we started to sell pigeon peas, we decided to build this reservoir.
As a first step, farmers are encouraged to plant only pigeon peas perpendicular to the direction of the wind. This helps halt erosion and over time replenishes the soil. Later, farmers can add other plants between the rows, and Zanapijo now grows sorghum, maize, wheat, and watermelons. Clara Frank, VOA News.
U.S. President Joe Biden called for the U.S. Congress to pass $33 billion in additional security and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine Thursday. Biden's request comes as lawmakers passed legislation expediting the transfer of military equipment to combat the unprovoked Russian invasion. And VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres was in Kyiv Thursday, even as Russians bombarded the Ukrainian capital. As Ukraine enters a third month of fighting back the unprovoked Russian invasion, more help could be arriving soon from the United States. U.S. President Joe Biden asked Congress for an additional $33 billion in assistance.
The cost of this fight is not cheap. But caving to aggression is going to be more costly if we allow it to happen. We either back Ukrainian people as they defend their country, or we stand by as the Russians continue their atrocities and aggression in Ukraine.
The $13.6 billion in assistance already authorized by U.S. lawmakers has nearly run out, the White House said Thursday.
We want to be able to continue to provide a range of security and military assistance to the Ukrainians. Now, we strategically front-loaded the military and security assistance we were providing a couple of weeks ago, expedited the delivery of it, because we knew that as Russia was repositioning in the east and really changing their strategic approach to focus on the Donbass, they would need that on the front end.
This new aid would include $8.5 billion in economic assistance, $3 billion in humanitarian aid, and $20 billion in military aid.
The Russians, as you would imagine, will continue to try to find ways to take out all of their air defense capabilities. And we need to stay focused on this. We need to make sure that we're providing them the capability to replenish those air defense capabilities if they are taken out. So this is a work in progress.
The new White House proposal for assistance also calls on the U.S. and international partners to hold the Russian government and oligarchs accountable for the war in Ukraine.
We're talking about the oligarchs and the yachts and the villas and bank accounts and so forth. But if we accept that principle, do you think it might also apply to state assets? For example, the much larger amount of money that has been frozen around the world belonging to the Russian central bank?
In short, yes. And this is one of the things that we've asked our own lawyers to look at, which is what authorities would be needed potentially to seize those assets.
The Biden administration has strong bipartisan support on Capitol Hill for sending more aid. On Thursday, the U.S. House of Representatives passed legislation expediting the process for sending U.S. weapons to Ukraine.
I strongly support this bill, which streamlines existing defense authorities to enable the president to enter into a lend-lease agreement directly with Ukraine and Eastern European countries. I know I speak for my Republican colleagues in expressing my wholehearted support for the people of Ukraine as they defend themselves and their democracy against Vladimir Putin's atrocities.
As millions flee Ukraine and reports of Russian atrocities mount, U.S. lawmakers are aware of the urgency for action.
This is a moment of grave emergency in Ukraine as Putin's army continues to bomb hospitals and schools, rape and assault women, and murder the civilian population.
Biden's request is not expected to face any significant opposition when Congress takes it up for consideration. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
As we get closer to the World Press Freedom Day Tuesday, Africa 54 is spotlighting the state of press freedoms in African countries. Today we focus on press freedoms in West Africa. Here is VOA's French to Africa chief, Timothée Dongmaye.
I would start by saying that these are worrisome times for the media in West Africa. Just today, the UN said it was dismayed by the decision by Mali's authorities to completely ban France 24 and RFI, the French media in Mali. In countries like Senegal, Burkina, things have worsened since last year. In Senegal, the arrest of Ousmane Sonko, the opposition leader, led to demonstrations, and the police brutalized the demonstrators, including some, and also some journalists covering the events. And since then, the situation has been tense for media in Senegal. The authorities accusing the media of biased coverage of the opposition demonstrations. In Burkina Faso, the coup in January and also the worrisome situation in terms of the jihadi attacks led the authorities to be more regarding in terms of media coverage. And even recently, the authorities called on journalists in Burkina to be more patriotic in their coverage of the events there. And so these are tough times for media in those countries, and I think it's really unfortunate. This is the time when citizens in Africa should get more coverage, but authorities are clamping down on media.
That was VOA French to Africa Chief Timothy Donangmaye. And it's time now for our Friday entertainment report, and joining us now is Music Time in Africa host Heather Maxwell. Hello, Heather.
Hi, Esther. Saturday, April 30th is International Jazz Day, and there will be a flagship All-Star Jazz Day concert organized by the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz and UNESCO. There are over 30 artists performing, including African jazz giants Ray Lema and Alun Wad, plus a new group of women from West Africa. Here is a sneak preview.
Big day for jazz giants tomorrow, Heather. Where can we watch this?
So we can watch this. It's going to be webcast worldwide starting at 9 p.m. UTC, and you can watch it on the UNESCO website, YouTube, Facebook, the UN, jazzday.com, the UN Web TV, and all U.S. State Department outlets.
What's the difference, Heather, when it comes to jazz, when you listen to jazz from different parts of the world, whether Asia, Africa, or here in the United States? Is there any variation, or jazz is jazz?
Jazz is hard to describe. It's really different according to an individual, as well as cultural, regions and styles. But the one thing it has in common, Esther, is that everybody improvises.
What more do you have for us?
Oh, yeah. So now I have one last thing to get you more excited about tomorrow and to send you off into your weekend in jazzy style. This is one of my favorite performances from 2018 by the legendary Richard Bona.
Kajinde yinat 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 kajinde yinat
That's it for this week's Entertainment Report. Esther, back to you.
Heather, thanks. Heather Maxwell joins us again on Africa 54 next Friday with another exciting entertainment report. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our new Facebook page, facebook.com/VOA Africa. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.
Empowerment and humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science and technology.
City, rural, educated or underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.